Radio Show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV Radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Fission radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear.
Good morning, UCY.TV radio listeners. This is Lonnie Clark with the Age of Fission radio show. Today is Call-In Friday. The phone number is 718-717-8296. And Dana Durnford was going to co-host with me, and I called him this morning a few minutes before the show, like I thought we agreed, and he did not answer the phone, so I'm sure he has a good reason. Maybe he's going to call in. I texted him the call-in number, but if not, he'll be with us regularly. So, this is my thing about Dana. Even if he just didn't feel like it this morning and didn't even want to have to talk to me and decided to change his mind, I don't care. He can come back anytime he wants because I love the work that Dana has done. I honestly don't know the guy personally. Do I love his character that we see on the radio and who we hear? I believe him to be true. Yes, because he cares about the planet so deeply. He dragged himself out of a wheelchair with his friends. He had friends, his family, his son. This is not like a made-up story. He went out there and took pictures of the coastline on Canada because he knew what it was going to do. And what was the story of the week this week? The crabs all along. We saw pictures on the internet of massive amounts of crabs dying around the planet. Southern California says, no, can't eat the crabs. They're too radioactive. Really? Well, they're saying it's red tide, right? But are they testing for radiation? You want to know what? Specifically, no. They are not testing for radiation. And the kinds of radiation they're testing for is interesting. I saw a story this morning, and I did not earmark it. It was on my cell phone. And it will easily find it. The radiation, this was really subtle. The story was, I don't want to destroy this man's name. He's a scientist who's studying the radiation in Tokyo, folks. He's studying the radiation in Tokyo, and he said that the particles that they've discovered of cesium-137, it's a new idea about cesium-137, which heretofore they thought only dispersed very widely in water, which is why the cesium-137 in the rain is extremely like stay out of the rain. That's for real. In America, they're like, oh, you're just being ridiculous. No, I live in Oregon, and I tell people, stay out of the rain. You want to not get cancer? Stay out of the rain. That's why homeless people have such a high rate. But back to this story. The cesium-137 disperses in water. This scientist discovered that the cesium in Fukushima, because of the hot particles, melded it to glass particles and dispersed it, and they have no idea what that means. They've never studied that. They've never actually seen that, so they don't know if there's an interaction because the cesium is extremely high. So It's very interesting what happens. I have not read the study. I read the story. So I am going to do some follow up on the story. This is the thing about this Fukushima stuff. It's like a part-time job. Seriously, because the people who are supposed to be telling us are talking about the Dumb and Dumberer show. I know on this radio show, especially on Call In Fridays, and the phone number is 718-717-8296. If somebody wants to call in and not hear the sound of my voice, yay, there's Dana. I bet you he'll be calling me. Let me see if I can call him or if he's going to call us in a minute. He just popped up. So let me see him. Let me give him a wee call. How about that? Instead of having you guys call in, let me call him. See if he'll answer. No. Nothing plugged in yet. So I'll let him call us. Dana, if you're listening to us, please give us a call, 718-717-8296. So I saw Dana pop up on my Skype notification. We do this radio show through the Skype menu. And it's really no secret, which is why we ask people to contribute, because it costs money getting servers, getting things up, making things work. So please make a donation to the video. Hey, is that Dana?
Yeah, good morning, Lonnie.
Good morning, Dana. How are you?
I thought we were starting next week.
Well, I put it up on the Facebook. Dana, and everybody, I'm sure that you have many of your fans that follow me on Facebook that are listening.
Sure.
So thank you for joining us. Did you see that story? Let me jump right into it because I was dumbfounded. Did you see that story on the cesium-137 in Tokyo?
For almost $500 billion.
Well, they discovered that it's not, you know how they think that cesium disperses in water? That's how it gets around.
The glass particles.
Yes. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
Okay, good, because I don't. I was sitting here bastardizing what the story was. So.
Oh, absolutely. No.
That's a very serious discovery, wasn't it? That's what they said. You know what really was subtle about that story, Dana, that was really interesting?
Sure.
They were studying the radiation in Tokyo, where they plan on having the Olympics, but they weren't saying any. He's saying, oh well, we're taking samples from air filters in Tokyo.
That was the first couple of days, and so they found over 450 billion becquerels, atomic decays of cesium-137, and for folks who don't understand it. The reactors are uranium, not cesium. And then there's 100 times more strontium, 90 for every cesium-137 created.
Say that 100 times more strontium?
90, yeah. And strontium-90 is a bone seeker.
For every what?
For every cesium-137 created. So there's a ratio known for the mixed fuel for each reactor, and these reactors were producing a ratio of 100 to 1 for every cesium. And so that's what cesium, of course, is a tracer, and they used that to extrapolate through mathematics what the ratios are. Yeah, and so not only that,
there's 100 times more. Like we're reading this story, and he's talking about so much becquerels or whatever. Do that exponentially 100 times.
That's how they've always done this to us. That's how they manipulated us and hid it away from us. That whole spectrum of it is, it's 100 times more strontium-90 per every single 137 that's made. So it's over the top.
137 is man-made.
And 137 is made from uranium-235, neptunium-241, and I can't remember. There's another one. So they're all man-made elements, and then the byproduct.
Wait a minute, uranium-235 is also man-made?
Yeah, uranium-235 is man-made from the 238 uranium.
Is 238 naturally occurring?
238 is the original stuff.
So that's their argument. Look, it's in the natural uranium, so it doesn't matter. That's
Right.
what I have been told. This is where they fuck
Right.
with my head because I
Yeah.
don't understand the science. So, but what this is what's happening. Their argument that it because it comes from a naturally occurring. In fact, I just had that conversation yesterday that I couldn't wrap my head around because it didn't seem to make sense. This is why that's why they dig up the naturally occurring uranium and
And
then
then
they
everything is made.
strip away a few atoms and they end up with 235.
Yeah, that's right. And they extrapolate to 235, and 235 is all they can is for weapons grade. You can use uranium 238 for power, but you can't use it. But you can't. It's a refined. You take 400 train car loads of iron ore, and then a couple of hundred train car loads of chemicals, and then swimming pools of water, and you mix all that together, and you get a gram. And you keep doing that until you got enough for a reactor. And then that refined product will
with
produce
all the chemicals
thousands
and
of isotopes.
mixed up uranium. So the depleted uranium is all actually mixed up with a bunch of other stuff besides, it's like not just the uranium, it's mixed up with a truckload of chemicals.
To get that original gram. Right. So you got 400 train car loads you take out of an iron ore, which is just iron ore. And then you break that down with chemicals, but out of 400 train car loads, you end up with a gram of uranium, 235. Ultimately, that's what you're doing. You're breaking it down to get to that stuff. And so then all of that stuff is released into the environment, all those chemicals and all that waste and all those tailing pond where they throw all the other stuff.
Can I ask you to jump in and ask a question here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because the chemicals that they mix in, are any of those chemicals the same kind of chemicals they use like for Monsanto, making GMOs or making automobiles or any other type of industry that's toxic or any of that stuff, the similar chemicals?
Yeah, these chemicals are very harsh chemicals. These are very dangerous and very controlled chemicals. These are man-made synthetic chemicals again, right? These are, yeah.
Because that's another part of the harm. That probably exacerbates the harm from the uranium.
Right. But anyway, they get it down, and then the reactors are taken 3,450 assemblies. Each assembly is 80 fuel rods. And in each rod is 80
Wait a minute.
pounds.
I always get confused. You know how many times I've heard this?
Yeah.
But I can't. Thank you for coming on my show and allowing me to ask questions because
that's how it works.
I need this because this is why it's difficult. We get out there and we meet people that are like, "Well, I'm educated and I know about this and blah blah blah," and they just like wah wah wah. And you know what I always tell them? You know what the net result is? We have dead crabs. We have no more sardines. Yeah. Look in our ocean. Yeah. If we have a nuclear volcano going on, we have an event that no one has ever seen on this planet.
Right.
And the entire world is acting like blah blah. Emperor has no clothes. Everything is fine. No.
We're being led around like the Pied Piper is really truly happening that way to the majority of the population, and the Pied Piper is the smut machine itself, and they know what they're doing. This is engineered, this is well thought out through think tanks and everything else how to defeat any opposition. They put an enormous amount of time, energy, and effort into making sure that we don't get in their way. And they have an agenda.
Oh, that's a great statement. They do. Say that again because that is actually so true, Dana. Say that again.
Yeah. I don't know if I can. But, I mean, they spend an enormous amount of time, monetary, energy, planning, and creating organizations to control us, literally, to control everything we see and everything we think about and control our thoughts, literally, to direct us to think we thought of those thoughts as original.
Assets on a balance sheet, baby. That's what I say in my intro.
And that's what they're doing to the population on purpose. Since the beginning of time, they've been doing this to us, manipulating the population. So people naturally, once again, they'll attack people who smoke cigarettes, and including family members or friends or strangers. They'll attack those people, and they don't even understand what they're doing, but they're conditioned to do that, and that is a reflex for them now, even though they don't understand what they're saying. And so they'll say, "Oh, nicotine will give you cancer," and as we talked about before, it's not the nicotine; it's 7,000 chemicals in your cigarette.
Right.
And then you look at Vietnam War. The Gulf of Tonkin was the start of the war where the Vietnamese attacked an American ship allegedly. Now we find out that didn't happen. And so we went to war for something that didn't happen. And that's from Robert McNamara and from the captain of the ship that was allegedly attacked.
You know what did happen? Shitloads of profit. That's what war is about. We now the United States, when we talk about, oh, we're the empire, that's too easy. We're war profiteers. Our major industry,
that's nationalism, yeah.
When a country's more than 50% of its budget goes into the military, something is wrong with the country. We don't. If we're free people, we don't need a budget that's more than 50%.
The mob don't even put 50% of their profits into the mob.
Into defending themselves. If you need to defend yourself that badly, you need to correct.
You aren't defending yourself. Well, you're not defending yourself. Exactly. When you go up.
Uh-oh, Dana, we lost you. So call us back. And I'll just hold on. Someone didn't like what we were talking about there, folks. So let's see if we can get Dana back on the line. This is what I was thinking about. I saw this article this morning about the Democratic Party. And, I've been saying Bernie Sanders because I am not a Republican. I don't think I could ever vote for a Republican, to be honest. That's why I can't vote for Hillary Clinton. I think she has a Republican agenda of murder, death, kill. That's how I view the Republican.
Well, she has that history, yeah.
Yeah, war profiteering. It's down to war profiteering. And I saw this article that said, oh, we're going to have a civil war in Philadelphia. Fuck them. We don't need to go to them. Like, if they're not going to apologize for stealing and rigging the nomination and trying to do everything they can to lie to us to push Hillary Clinton down our throats, then fuck them. We're not going to vote for you. Then who cares? We don't need a civil war. It's a political party. Screw off. We could just choose to not vote, but I'm not going to do that because that's what they'd prefer. So fuck them. Excuse my language.
Yeah, we're supposed to vote. Not that voting means anything.
Well, but you know what? You know why voting does not mean anything? Because the muscle of our weights of our votes are left sitting our asses on the sofa. In America, only 18% of the actual people who are registered, who are qualified to vote, can vote. When they say, oh, we got a 60% turnout, we got a 60% turnout of the registered voters. Well, when only 25% of the voters register, really?
Yeah.
How much is that? 18, 20% maybe at a great election turnout? No wonder the oligarchs are freaking hitting us over the head. 500 people showed up. Did you see that art festival against the uranium mining out in the desert? They had this festival in Australia. I just saw a video this morning.
In Australia?
Yes.
Okay.
It's so awesome. And all these people, they wore like these costumes and they were very insulting. Of course, the people in America want to do that, but frankly, we're scared of our police. We are a military state. Let's be clear. I am spied on. Outside the front of my door is a box directly looking into my window, right at my desk right now while I'm talking. Hi, guys. With a camera pointed right at me with absolutely no attempt to hide it.
They can't live with us watching them, with us being the checks and balances. They can't do or get away with the things they want to get away with or create the environment they create if we pay attention.
That's right.
And slowly but surely, the whole environment now has been focused on controlling everybody and demonizing anybody for saying something different. But the whole point is that the minute that somebody speaks out against them, they freak out, they panic, they hit buttons, they go, they lose their minds, they become vindictive, they go to war against that person that dare speak out and have another narrative.
How many people have they said that have been dead around the Bush crime family or dead around the Clintons? Anybody?
Right.
Well, the Clintons are part of the Bush crime family. That's why there's so many dead people around them. I mean, for real.
Well, there's a saying about Hillary: wherever Hillary goes, Blackwater is soon to slaughter.
Wow,
and that's
really?
true. Yeah, that's true. Because when Hillary was a war hawk, when she was in the government, a higher-ranking government war hawk, that's what she done. She pushed weapons and she pushed war. And because that's every one of these people that were allegedly, a leader of the country in America, and including Canada, this is their ideology. This is who runs them. This is who funded them. Is that war machine? And that's why the war machine in America now can contribute whatever it wants. When before there was a limit on what corporations. Once again, you're getting back to what the problem is corporate personhood. So there's no one accountable to these joint corporations. But if you got a corporation, a normal one, you're accountable. And so a joint corporation has diplomatic immunity. Mark Zuckerberg can't get a criminal record. Mark Zuckerberg won't be vilified in the media for no matter what crime it is.
Say that again? You're saying that a joint because of the
corporate
trade agreements and the corporate personhood, that a joint venture cannot. Yes, because he could get a criminal record if he did anything personally and he was convicted personally. As a corporation, no.
But that's only a corporation that's on the stock exchange. That doesn't apply to a normal business.
That's right.
Yeah, they run on a charter. But a corporation has put itself into the untouchable zone. And that's not supposed to exist. They piggybacked off the slavery law, illegal amendment, to give themselves those privileges. And that's why they're so harmful, and that's why they're so dangerous, and that's why they're so destructive, and that's why they're so powerful.
Well,
it's because there's no check and balance.
Well, not only just no check and balance, even if there is a check and balance, people get bought off. Like, they're just like, we have seen, look at, this is why I like my Senator Jeff Merkley here in Oregon. He went to the United States Senate. He beat out a Republican here. We beat out Gordon Smith, and who we went to go ask him what he was going to do about the lies of Cheney, like when it was coming out. He's like, oh, well, we're working on it. We're working on it. That's what he would say. Well, yes, we know these facts. We're working on it. So he got beat in Oregon, and Jeff Merkley is now the junior senator to the hawk, Ron Wyden, who I think is a Republican. He's been one of the people who's been seriously intimidated. Jeff Merkley went to the Senate and created a great piece of legislation to amend the Price-Anderson Act, which holds some member of a corporation liable for the harm they knowingly cause to the human species and to the environment. If they harm our planet or human beings or anything, that person can be held up accountable in a court of law. Because right now in the nuclear industry, if a CEO of an organization, and only in the nuclear industry, the coal industry does not have this, these major other corporations don't have it, only the nuclear industry. If you knowingly or unknowingly cause harm in the United States, you are not held liable for any reason, past, present, or future. You walk away. That's why they are destroying our entire East Coast and our country is just one big toxic slough of nuclear waste. If you look at the map, it is shocking.
The nuclear waste and the holding sites are everywhere.
It's an offense to humanity. It's an offense
it's
to
not supposed to
planet
exist.
Earth.
Under laws, a nuclear wouldn't exist and never could have existed. And so then every nuclear scientist has breached their oaths beyond imagination, has turned their back on their own friends and families and loved ones and communities and the entire ecosystem. Every nuclear scientist and everybody who plays a part in the industry perpetrates a lie on purpose. That is like bananas or walking in the sunshine and getting on an airplane is just one of the many lies. And then the storage lie, they can't store it. And then the contract, the original doctrines, the original charters for nuclear power plants was nothing got off the site. Nothing. And right away, they could not meet that obligation. Under any circumstances, there was no way to meet that obligation because of the noble gases that these things releases. And they knew that in the 1940s. There was no illusion about it. The illusion was that we didn't know any better. And so they had to keep that illusion in order so they can do what they were doing. And what they do, they can't exist in comparison with any other energy company. They're completely 100% subsidized. Every aspect of them, including the Glass-Steagall and these other laws that were meant to hold them accountable, were barriers to them that were removed because they couldn't exist without it. And then the weapons that manifested from that, like munitions, depleted uranium. You got McAllister bomb manufacturer in McAllister, Oklahoma. There's 1,800 people live there, and they all work making depleted uranium munitions. And these munitions, these are war crimes. Every time you fire these things off, these are dirty bombs. These meet all the criteria for a dirty bomb. And that they had original manuals. It was originally called DOLRAM, depleted uranium low-level radioactive material. And somehow they got rid of that acronym and ended up with DU, depleted uranium. There's nothing depleted about it. It has gone through a chain reaction. And so its half-life is 4.5 billion years. So it will never deplete.
Wow.
Yeah. And then the byproduct of it, that they can't use, is poured into unlined trenches. Like Hanford has 41 miles of unlined trenches where they dump unbelievable material. But if it was a lined trench, then you can end up with a chain reaction, and that trench from all these heavy metals coming in contact with each other. You can start fission on its own.
Oh my God, that's
right?
why they didn't do it because that was a part of that story that I didn't understand. Why Bechtel didn't line them intentionally. They were ordered by the government to line them. The report said that I read said that they were required to line them, and that they did not line them. They decided to save money. It wasn't about saving money. I bet you those scientists knew that suggestion would cause a serious problem.
Right. No, they knew that. And they dumped 56 billion gallons directly into the soil at Hanford. You would bankrupt America cleaning up carbon-free Hanford, right? And everything they say about nuclear carbon-free, even when it's burning, is not carbon-free. But the whole process, just to get your hands on nuclear, is ripping mountains apart. The Navajo Nation, the native Navajo Nation, has 15, just their little spot, has 15,000 abandoned uranium mines, and the tailing ponds and all the chemicals and harshness and toxins and dioxins that was used there is all abandoned. And then they moved on to another place. So 15,000 abandoned mines would totally break the country trying to clean that up. So it's Hanford and that, and then every nuclear site you got, and you got hundreds of these nuclear holding sites. None of them are actual waste sites. There's nowhere on the planet where there's an actual waste. Switzerland allegedly has a suppository for the planet, or repository, whatever you want to call it, where they put it down in a hole in the planet. And then that has been shown down the road will become back into the environment. Even though they might put it a half mile down into the planet, if you have an accident chain reaction, it can find its way back into the environment, but it can pollute the entire planet. Yeah. So why would we go after something like that? Because it's the perfect weapon against everything on the planet. See, a large part of that system out there, they worship Satan, they worship Lucifer.
This is real. We're not joking, folks. This is why when people say, why would they do that? This is real. They really
How many people worship the Bible?
For human life. That's not just a light sentence.
How many people worship the Bible? Okay. Well, think about if you got a political party, you have these votes where they're 51, 49% in the votes because half like one half and half like the other half. It's literally like that in religion. Where half worships God,
how many Muslims
and the rest of them, not the rest of them, but a big percentage of them actually worship Satan. And those are the people that end up in positions of power. You got Kathleen Higley is a radiation expert in the United States.
She's right here in Corvallis.
Right,
I know
and
her
she's
name. I looked her up. She's kind of difficult to find.
and she seems to be a relatively obscure person, but she's in charge of setting the policies for employees, for people in communities about nuclear,
Mm-hmm.
and for victims in the hospitals for cancer treatment.
Mm-hmm.
That's the stupidest thing imaginable. Why do we use nuclear on people in the hospital? We use nuclear on every animal on the species, every animal species on the planet, and it killed them, every one of them. Throughout the last 70 years, no animal has survived. So why would we take that and put that into a human or a child? So why would the government steal our children and give them chemotherapy, which starts out with chemicals and ends up with nuclear, and every one of them, none of them have an extended lifespan, and 97% of them die before they would have died without the chemotherapy. And so the chemotherapy, why would we allow that to continually take place when the evidence is overwhelming? It's because that was the agenda. Why do we do it in every single hospital? Why is that somehow the solution when the solution has never worked? And so why do we steal people's children? Because we created legislation that said that if they got cancer, we got to give them chemotherapy. And so that's the death sentence for the children.
That's
and
true.
parents.
You are required to give them chemotherapy. If
You're
your
required.
In
How
the
did
United
that
States,
ever happen?
at least, I personally would
How
not
the
ever
fuck
do
did
that.
we
I
ever
would leave the
fucking end up with
country.
that?
I mean, honestly, because chemo. Well, you know, the thing is, you can go get alternative healing and get well. Like when
Not
I
legal.
was. Well,
Not legally if you're a minor. You can't do that to your minor. They'll come and put you in jail, take the kid, and finish the kid off. That's every headline says that. See? And so alternative, like you're talking about, is a good idea, but not if you're a minor. If you're a minor and you got cancer, the doctor will steal.
Oh, that's right. You know what, Dana? I read this is when you were talking about the reality of that of why they had those online trenches. I'm going to dig out that story. This is exactly what I mean. This is why shows like this, Libby Levy's show, Kevin Blanchett, people's shows are met, you know, the Post Ignorance Project, this show, we're working on getting another show on this radio station, and I'm not going to say anything about it, but I know we are, to discuss the real truth about radiation and the harm that it's causing, because this is a catastrophic emergency that people don't know about. This story that I read led me to believe it was a cost savings measure. A journalist wrote those words, a cost savings measure, instead of saying they knew that it would cause a catastrophic event. Do you get it? They don't want to scare people, so they're like, oh, it's a cost savings measure. This is how they fucking, excuse my language, this is how they work. That's right. The outrage of it. This is how the media works with the nuclear industry to lie and kill our planet. Which brings me to this. Yeah. Well, look, let me jump in on this one because I see we're at 8:33. I have two things that I'd like to get in. First, it is call-in Friday, so if anybody, would you mind if anybody called and gave us a question or something, Dana?
Oh, no, fire it away.
Okay, I'm going to give out the number at 718-717-8296, and you are listening to the Age of Fission radio show with Lonnie Clark and my guest co-host, Dana Durnford, which, cross our fingers, he'll be able to join us on a regular basis, because as you can see, his brain is filled. He studied uranium. The second thing I'd like to say is Miss Milky the Clown, who many of us know, she's a YouTube video channel, Miss Milky the Clown 1, normally covers a lot of different stories and has long, lengthy things. She has a strike on her because Dana was on the Richie Allen show, and she thought because Richie Allen he espouses to be a socialist, and you know, like you were on his show, she thought, well, I could just use it. Well, they got a strike. It turns out it was
that was Arnie Gunnarsson.
Huh?
That was Arnie Gunnarsson on the Richie Allen show. I was talking to Jen.
Oh, that was it. Oh, that was Arnie Gunderson. Thank
Yeah,
you for
Arnie
clarifying
Gunderson.
that.
No, that's okay.
I thought it was your interview.
Sure.
So, but anyways, so she has a strike, and she's asked me specifically to say to the listeners of my radio show to please go to her Miss Milky the One Clown station and copy as much of her work as she can. She doesn't want it to. It's all still valid. Look through it, and she'll be much more active after December when the strike comes off. So until then, she's hoping that people will mirror things and put things up, go to her channel, mirror things. And if you see something, put it up, because it is a bit of work to put up these videos on YouTube and get the information out. Like, I'm sure, Dana, you're like me. This is kind of like a part-time job. In fact, for you, it's probably more of a full-time job.
Well, I create all my own content, yeah.
Right. And you
Jan is taking other material and then dressing it up and posting it out there. And we need that. I'm not saying anything about that. I'm just saying there is a big difference, right? Yeah. I'm doing this really stressful. But she has that whole litany, that whole history all the way from 2011 accident all the way up to present. So everybody that was reasonable speaking about it, she found it and tried to post it up at her two sites, Miss Milky the Clown and Miss Milky the Clown 1. And Jan, she's burnt out 5 years hardcore of doing that. And
none of us thought it would. You know what's really amazing, Dana? It's 5 years in and people look at us like we're nuts that we're still thinking about it. When it's, in fact, way worse than it was.
Well, a lot of the isotopes in a chain reaction don't mature for 10 or 20 years. In other words, the volume of plutonium being released is increasing for a number of years before it starts to slow down. But it takes decades and centuries and millenniums before it even slows down to certain numbers to what its regular number. So the whole process of a chain reaction, when that chain reaction, okay, so Chernobyl lasted 10 days. Chernobyl was 400 Hiroshima bombs worth of radiation for 10 days, but it stopped. If it had lasted all the way up until now and never stopped, Chernobyl was 1/3 the size of any of the reactors in Japan. It was a 30% meltdown. But Chernobyl was also different fuel. But if Chernobyl didn't stop, right now it'd be equal to 4.5 million Hiroshima bombs, because every 10 days would have been equal to 400 Hiroshima bombs.
That's Chernobyl.
Yeah.
So this is the other mathematics thing. I heard somebody on the radio say something like, and it was actually the first time on mainstream media I heard them admit it. Chernobyl was a 1/3 meltdown, and this was 3 nuclear meltdowns, so it's 3 times as bad. Like, no, it's much worse than 3 times as bad.
Yeah, and now there was actually 15 plants that couldn't go in a cold shutdown and had station blackout in Japan. And these words, these are emergencies. They call it station blackout. We call it a catastrophic event. And they call it it can't go in a cold shutdown. We call it a catastrophic event. And that's what they call it too. But when they talk about it, they call it a station blackout, say. Well, when it goes into a chain reaction, what happens? The reason the stuff in Japan or Chernobyl was 400 Hiroshima bombs, and a Hiroshima bomb was just a single pound. But a Hiroshima bomb was dropped right close to the ground. So what it done was it sucked up 1 million tons of gravel and buildings and logs and cement, atomized and aerosol and ionized and radiated those elements and those atoms. And they became the same as nuclear. And now Fukushima didn't stop doing that. The fission is still going on these reactors, still cannibalizing rocks and steel and water and cement and everything else, and gravel, pebbles, and everything else. And it atomizes and aerosols it back into the environment. So it's able to produce more radioactive material than was originally put into the reactor, because once it goes into a chain reaction, it's consuming, it can do its own chain reaction for millenniums, for millions of years. We don't know if it'll do that for millions, but it could. And while it's doing that, it doesn't need anything. It can just sit there and be in a chain reaction. But everything that it touches, it cannibalizes. because it'll chain reaction will be up around 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. And so rocks will disappear at 2,000 degree Fahrenheit temperature and turn into smoke, so to speak. But in this case, we're talking about an enormous amount of material constantly being created, and the original material is still sitting there.
That's why people can't be in there for more than like maximum, even with their air filters, like 20 minutes, right?
Well, close to these things, you're getting, like we think of radiation as ingesting it. Like we think of atoms. But when you're close to the rods or the reactors that have broken, then or have gone to a chain reaction, you're talking about X-rays, you're talking about neutrons, you're talking about gamma burst.
Goes right through.
Yeah.
Boom.
So we're talking about something that'll go through the building, and then so the tanks farm at Fukushima, 1,000 tanks. These tanks are putting out gammas and X-rays and neutrons.
Right. I mean, exactly. That's right.
So now, 40 minutes in that environment, you'll melt your organs. You'll die right there. And that's from the gammas, X-rays, and neutrons. These are unbelievable, unimaginable. And I know that Unit 4 fuel pool was putting out around 40 billion neutrons per second. One of the counts they had done.
Per second.
Yeah, and so these that's like 40 billion X-rays hitting you from a hospital, right? And so this is like unbelievable, nasty stuff. But it has this phenomenon where all the material can be. So you know how a screwdriver once again becomes magnetized on a battery. Everything can be radiated by coming in contact with the neutron beams. Can radiate it, and then that puts out energy. So everything becomes contaminated just from that kind of exposure, but it's contaminated permanently. And if you liberate it into the environment, like they're burning radioactive waste right across the country in the actual incinerators, and they're burning it at a rate of 300,000, they claim, becquerels of cesium. Now, cesium, once again, is just one of the thousands of elements that's coming out of there, but it's the one that we call a tracer, and it's the one they refer to constantly. The reactors are not cesium cores.
Could you? I don't mean to be dense here, but could you say that again? Like my brain is like, ding. So
no, I hear it. That's why I do it all the time.
I know, but this is the thing. These reactor cores, it's cesium-137 is, you're saying it's multiplying as it's coming out. Like it's increasing. It hasn't actually not, it's billion times worse than it was 5 years ago. Is there any way that they could have stopped this? Let's say if the governments had really taken this seriously in the first 6 months or the first year, is there anything that they could have done to like go, we're going to mitigate this and make it stop? Is there anything they could have done?
Well, in Chernobyl, they sent in 600 helicopter pilots. They all died. That's not recorded officially at United Nations or something. What United Nations scum.
Right. Well, they just, they're United Nations against the people is really like, they don't care. They just lie and cheat. The IAEA has authority over the World Health Organization. And actually in Chernobyl prevented them from going into Chernobyl for 5 years. And they only allowed them to study 3 types of cancer only in children. That's why now they say, it takes 5 years to get cancer and only in children and only produces 3 types of cancer that we know about.
And they talk about how they've been studying the fallout effects on Hiroshima and Hiroshima victims. Well, all they actually study there is external exposure.
That's right.
They don't study the actual internal. They don't recognize the internal.
That's right.
And so these people that studied, they say we went and studied Chernobyl or Hiroshima and Nagasaki. These are the lowest of the lowest of the lowest of the lowest life forms on this planet.
You want to know, back to what you said about them being Satan worshipers, it reminded me of this thing that I read on my channel, and I think I'm going to reread it. The Safety of Nuclear Power by Alvin Weinberg, Dr. Alvin Weinberg, a nuclear apologist. It was given at a symposium at the science writing briefing at the New Horizons Science in Boulder, November 14th, 1972. This is what this rat said. It said, however, if one thinks about it for a minute, the prolonged storage in in vaults of waste containing plutonium-239 requires a long-term commitment to by highly intelligent managers of such waste systems. By highly intelligent managers of such waste systems. Thus, the price exacted by the permanent disposal of waste in concrete vaults may be a commitment to a priesthood that will tend the vaults for times unimaginably longer than the time scale of any previous human endeavor. A commitment to a priesthood, isn't that what these fuckers think about themselves? That they are priests and they're highly intelligent. They always come up with this like little snooty nose, like they know the comments we get. I have been stalked this week, and now I'm beginning to get it because I guess because of this radio show, people know, and I'm making comments. This stuff is killing us. And these pro-nuke liars and apologists, people like Catherine Higley, who wrote that stupid paper that said a banana is as harmful as what's coming out of Fukushima, is just an insult to our intelligence.
She has an incredible, unbelievable amount of accolades, of degrees and recognition. Unbelievable. She has an education that is unblemished. It's inconceivable how much time and energy and degrees she actually has and how many boards she's on. But if you go listen to her lecture and you know anything about nuclear, because most people don't, but if you do happen to know something about it, you'll find out that every step, every sentence is a lie or a construct for the next lie. It's utter betrayal, and they got all those degrees, and they're actually really are smart, and they're doing what they're doing on purpose. It's not an accident. They're not naive or gullible. They never misrepresented it or misunderstood it or misread it. This is ideology, and they know what they're doing is evil and wrong and dark and twisted and mental and maniacal, but they find new ways to do it. And they brag about that, how difficult it is for them to get the public to accept that it's like a banana or a potato chip. Well, the reason being is because it's not like that. But this is their agenda, is to get people convinced and then use those people to bludgeon any opposition. Those people will come out and attack any opposition because they've been sucked into that world. And so, like, if you were a normal person and you looked at her degrees, you would be like, well, Dana, my goodness, she why would she lie? Dana, the university would take her degree away from her. And sorry, that never happened in the history of academics, when it should happen repeatedly for the nuclear industry. Every one of them should have their degree taken away from them for coming out and lying to the population. But all the media backs the lie up with no opposition. And so you will never get on a radio show opposite Kathleen Higley. I'll never get on it. Nobody will. They'll have another so-called expert just like her dare to back up what she says. No one will be there to challenge her. And if you did do that, it would never be an honest debate. It would be there to set up, make other people look stupid.
Or the radio show or the television show would have to edit that clip. I mean, like,
honestly,
that's what happened with Kevin. Kevin was going around, when we were working together and Kevin was traveling around the country, he would get interviews. He was pretty daring. He'd walk up to people, he'd engage the media, blah, 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 and he'd stand there and talk to them, and he'd, like, look serious. Kevin does great interviews.
Yeah.
And frankly, he knows a lot in his head. And so he did really good interviews, and rarely they would like clip out the most radical statement just to make him look like he's some wild person, and like he'd get on, if they used it at all. Or this is more commonly what they did, they didn't put his face on, they used his voice. They would use his voiceover. It was really devious, and so it got to the guy, he was like, fuck you. Really?
Yeah. Like KRQE Channel 13, after the WIP Waste Repository accident, I had made a video and broke down what really happened because they were lying, and here was the documentation, so I come out and shared the documentation. KRQE Channel 13 came out and called me a conspiracy theorist, used a video clip of me. Now, I was talking in that particular little clip they used. I said, well, the radioactive is going to fall out in your communities. It'll fall out on your children's toys. It'll fall out in your drinking water and stuff like that. And we showed the documentation of that. And they clipped that out and actually played that clip and then called me a conspiracy theorist. But that's exactly what happens after a nuclear accident. they abandoned WIP because of a truck fire originally. 10 days before they admitted there was a radioactive releases, even though they didn't say they were the same reasons. So they had a truck fire. They left the mines. There's 55 football field sized caverns down there. All they had to do was get on the other side and put the fire out and tow the truck out and keep on working. But they never went back down for 10 days. Then we had the video of the smoke coming out of the buildings from the mine. It never stopped coming out. Like a truck fire doesn't burn very long, doesn't last very long. This stuff kept going and going and going. And they never went back down in the mine after those 10 days. They said they had a release down there. So now they couldn't go back down there after, first was the truck fire and then they had a release. It was actually the release. There was no truck fire. The media came out and showed a truck fire from an old picture. Mm-hmm. No one had been down there to take a picture. And this is a story they're still sticking to. They can't get back down in the WIP because the entire tunnel now is contaminated. So, I don't know about people who might have had fires in their house that got put out, say, in their stove or something like that. And what they would have found was the top part of their home would have been all soot, covered in soot. They would have to go in and vacuum the whole house down, wash all the walls, repaint it all, throw everything away in order to salvage that house. Well, that's what happened at WIP. But that was radioactive material. And so the walls is now and the floor and the ceiling and everything, the whole environment is radiated. And so they can't get back in there. You can't clean it up. You can't contain it. You can't get in and fix the cavern where there was the accident.
And you know what's really disgusting? That is on the
One lie after another lie after another lie.
Well, that's on the Navajo Nation, and they did not want that. They did not want that facility there. They said no. There's a documentary about this, and they said no, we don't want it. And you know what, the U.S. government, they basically came in and told the city, you know what, either you're taking it, you're going to take our $32 million or you're not, but we're building it. Try to stop us. That's what they said to them. And that's exactly why they allowed it to happen. When they first opened, there was so much pollution. The first wave of children, people died, the sheep died. It was just, they are devastated by this. And with WIP, it is even far worse. It's criminal, really. It is really criminal.
WIP never stopped leaking. It's kind of
like St. Louis, Dana. Like, really, there is absolutely no regard for the implications for the health of our environment or our people by the people that are running our government, our elected, so-called electeds.
It's bigger than a handful, but it's only a small crew of them that are doing this to us.
But you know what? There's a lot more of them because, at least in our country, our Congress, they control the funds. They could say no.
No, Congress goes along with it.
And why? I actually, I've seen Ron Wyden change. I'll be honest. I think Ron Wyden got the little come to Jesus talk and said, your kids will disappear, your wife will disappear, you guys will die if you don't go with us. That's what I think. He went to Fukushima 4 times at the beginning, and he came back after the 3rd time, and boy, did he change his tune. He was not the same person. He was freaked out, and he said, look, his office said, we can't talk to you about it. It is under the Price-Anderson Act. The Homeland Security Act, and we can't talk to you about it anymore. It's considered. I'm like, you guys are going to tell me because of the National Security Act that you can't, the Patriot Act, because it's been relegated to a national security issue, you can't talk to me. I'm your constituent. You can't tell me whether I'm in harm's way. They said it has been deemed a national security
They done that when the original fallout came through the country. They deemed it a national security risk. And that's why they hid those numbers away. And those numbers were 1 million becquerels a square meter throughout North America. 1 million becquerels. Here in British Columbia and Vancouver, one of the major cities here, they found, what was the numbers again? 400 million iodine 129 with a 15 million year half-life from the chain reaction in a liter of rainwater, per liter of rainwater. And so once again, you can use that as a tracer for all the other isotopes. And so we got that confirmation just about a month ago, 100% now finally confirmed 5 years later. But what it shows you was that, rain doesn't fall by the liter. And British Columbia is a tropical province, 26,000 islands, a very big province, and that it rains all the time. It never stops raining for some places here. And so the stuff that came across would have been rained out heavily along the coastline of Canada, in particular because of the rainforest that permeates through the whole coastline. And so we got pounded, we got destroyed. And that's why the coastline is naked, completely naked.
Because
and then
it just
nobody's
got
talking
washed
about it.
away from the rain.
Right, and the University of Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, and Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, two people from that institution, both marine chemists, were tasked with coming out and deceiving the population. And I was arrested for calling them lawyers. I was arrested for holding my head up and saying, I'm not going to sit here and take that law, and here's the law, here's how they're doing it to you, and broke it all down. And what happened when I came ashore after the 5 expeditions for Fukushima, I get arrested, and now
almost
I'm smeared.
As soon as you got, you know what? This is the entrapment.
And that was used to try to get me off the local radio.
That's right.
Station here.
That's right.
Right, recently, because I'm about to start a radio show. I'm hoping to here, and that was used. Those articles, those people, were used as justification by one of the people there to keep me from getting a radio show. That was used in my own community against me because they're academics and I'm not. Therefore, I must be a bad person. That was used last week to my face against me. And, of course, I went to bat against that, and I'm still waiting for a decision, but it doesn't look good. It looks like I got the shaft because
you mean you're saying that
these are lies.
You cannot have a radio show in Canada?
Because of that.
You're not allowed to be. Well, they could not control this show. Like you being on this radio show, that's
different. But I can't have my own radio show. Now, I might get it because I do have friends.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're putting pressure on these people right now. But the point is that I'm being originally denied, and this has to be reviewed because I'm not even convicted of it. I've been to court 5 times. This is meant to bankrupt me. This was a slap suit.
Well, the charges that they're giving you are so outrageous, as if you could be, like they're saying that, the physical threat. It's like ridiculous.
A physical threat.
Is it not?
See, when you put it in the context of what I said, the 1-hour video, it's not a threat. It's an outburst.
At all.
It's just an outburst.
That's right. Exactly.
And because I live in a hospital bed in a wheelchair for the most part for the last 15 years, I'm not even capable of hurting somebody.
That's true. If
but
I'm
entitled.
They would have seen that. Like this.
I'm entitled. Yeah.
Has the judge watched any of the videos that you've produced?
Sorry.
Has the judge watched any of the videos that you've produced?
No, the judge barred bananas, potato chips, and walking in sunshine.
Wow. As
context, and said then the videos are. We'll let you go in a second, but the video was 1 hour long, but they're not allowed to use the video. For context, you're not allowed to use the sentence. You're not allowed to use the video of the sentence. You're not allowed to use the audio of the sentence. You're only allowed to use the transcript of the sentence that they found offending without the context of what I said before or after or the documentation that was there when I said it and the reason I said it. And it's an outburst. And it's totally... I have every right to say what I said, and in Canada, I'm going to exercise that right. No, I'm not going to be beat in this one, even though they have set the stage to try to convict me for something that is not convictable.
We have about 35 seconds left. I'm sorry, I was just not watching the clock. I was listening to what you were saying. Listen, thank you, Dana, for joining us and jumping back in. I hope you can join us again because this is super helpful and been really
Fridays.
And it, the nuclear proctologist, that's where people can find your work. Do you live stream? Are you allowed to live stream?
I am.
What time do you live stream? Get that out.
Well, I'm broken up at this stage. I'm just burnt out.
So you're taking a rest from the live stream.
I'm burnt out, yeah.
Well, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. Seriously.
Yeah, you're welcome, honey. Thank you for having me. Hugs for everybody out there. Take care, folks.
Yeah, put your courage feet on, you guys. Take some action.
Anti-Media Radio with your host, Nick.